Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching this short video talk about our paper titled Do Privacy and Security Matter to Everyone? Quantifying and Clustering User-Centric Considerations about Smart Home Device Adoption. I'm Natã Barbosa and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and here I also speak for my co-authors Zhuohao Zhang and Wang. The motivation for our research primarily came from seeing a lot of concerns in smart home device adoption with regard to privacy and security. There is media reports and there is consumer reports constantly showing how consumers are concerned about what the devices are doing, yet year over year adoption continues to grow. Looking at this, we wondered, what's going on? Is this a paradox that's taking place? For example, do people say they are concerned about privacy and security and then their behavior suggests otherwise? Or is there more nuance to their privacy decision making? In order to study this, we conducted an online survey with 631 US-based participants on Amazon Mechanical Turk. In this survey, we asked participants to tell us what could motivate them to purchase smart home products. Similarly, we also asked them what could keep them from adopting smart home devices. In our analysis, we found that the top motivators for people to consider buying smart home devices are convenience, ease of use, price, cost saving, and need. In a similar analysis for factors that could prevent people from adopting, we found that the top blockers are price, privacy, security, ease of use, and reliability. These are things that participants claim would prevent them from adopting smart home devices. And on the y-axis on the chart, you see the percentage of participants who mentioned each of those factors as blockers. We further conducted a consumer segmentation analysis where 3 clusters emerged. The first cluster was the affordability-oriented cluster. And this was composed by participants who mentioned that they would not purchase a device if it was too expensive, for example. The second cluster was the privacy-oriented cluster, and in this cluster it was common to see participant responses mentioning that they were afraid of monitoring or secondary use of their data collected inside their homes. Finally, the third cluster was the reliability-oriented cluster, and in this cluster, participants' responses indicated things such as what would happen if the internet went down, would the device still work, and things like that. The clusters we identified were largely defined by the blockers that people responded in the survey. Finally, from this clustering analysis, we attempted to reconstruct the decision-making process of our participants by training a decision tree classifier in order to predict the cluster that each participant would belong in. And we created a decision tree with the fewest number of factors. And this tree was composed by privacy blocker and price blocker and motivator. And the way to interpret this, and this is the main takeaway from this tree, is that a consumer may initially not choose to adopt a specific smart home device because they cannot afford it or they think it's too expensive. And this consumer is also concerned about their privacy. Yet, if at some point they have a price incentive to adopt, they might even consider adopting that device. And you would see here that how if price becomes a motivator at some point, for example, through promotions or device giveaways, this consumer who would otherwise be privacy oriented becomes affordability oriented. And this is the takeaway from this decision tree. From this analysis and other analysis that I briefly presented, we drew some recommendations for developers and policymakers. For developers, we recommend that they highlight priorities. For example, highlight for a specific device, what was the priority for that device? Was it a low cost? Was it to preserve privacy, or was it to make the device reliable? This will help consumers find the right device for them and meet them where they are. We also recommend surfacing trade-offs. For example, if a camera is to have an offline mode for privacy reasons, object detection may not work well in offline if it's relying on the cloud to do that. This may affect reliability. Similarly, if you were to implement this object recognition capability into the camera so that it can work offline, it may make the device more expensive. For policymakers, most of our recommendations focus on mitigating bounded rationality, which is the idea that consumers are making decisions based on the information available to them at the time of the decision. For example, policymakers could require developers to communicate if a device is cheaper or free, but potentially privacy invasive, if it's more expensive but also more reliable, and ultimately educating consumers when the smart alternative is cheaper or free. For example, is it free but introduces internet connection? Thank you so much. Feel free to check out our paper and get in touch with us.